Welcome to the Stressless Eating Podcast, where we help diet-obsessed and food-crazed women break themselves out of the food and body prison, end the dieting madness, and take control of their health for good. I'm your host, Leanne Ellington, and this podcast is about answering one question. How can you heal your relationship with food and your body and take a practical approach to this whole self-love journey, but without all that restriction, obsession, and shame, and without needing years of therapy to do so? If you want to know the answer, you're in the right place. All this information is 100% free, so please subscribe to and review our podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode. It's a special one. It was originally going to be just me, but after kind of talking through this topic with my BFF, Laura Lee, we decided to get her in here. So say hello, Laura Lee.
Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be back.
Yes, we love having Laura Lee, and she brings such just a new, fresh perspective because obviously we have different places in the wellness world, and it's just such a good little mishmash of mindset and thought processes. But anyways, we're calling this the Holiday Success Guide. And at first, we actually were going to call it the Holiday Survival Guide, but it's like, no way. We are not here to just survive. We are here to completely, that's really the theme of what we're talking about here is like, what if we could really, take these next couple of months that a lot of people tend to kind of go down the rabbit hole or fall into old habits or, fall off the metaphorical wagon. And what if we could make it really, really powerful? So we're going to go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to have just Laura Lee kind of chime in whenever it feels good for her, because we get really passionate about this stuff.
Yeah, we do.
This stemmed a few weeks ago. I called you and I was like, I have to create something about the holiday season, and it started because I literally saw a post on Facebook from somebody that I know. And she said, hey, should I stay fat or should I lose weight before the new year? I think those were the literal words that she said. And no judgment. Like this is the kind of conversation that a lot of people are having, and they think it's the conversation that they need to have. But really, I want to point you into a new conversation or invite you into a new conversation. And the thing that really got my attention was all of the responses. There were literally like comment after comment that said, stay fat, stay fat, stay fat. A couple people said like, now is the time, like take care of your health or whatever. But it was just such an interesting dialogue. Like, and not only are we dealing with this, holiday time, but this mindset of really calling ourselves fat. And, like resigning to this thought process that we either have to like stay where we are or go on a diet, work our butt off and restrict and, micromanage and obsess and all of that, and not enjoy the holidays as we go, And so I wanted to just really totally change the conversation, like give you an alternate to talk about or a different thought process. And so, we're calling this the Holiday Survival Guide because, this is a weird time of year and it's a weird year. And we just want to make sure that you are equipped to not just survive, but really make yourselves better during this time of the year, right? So before we dive in, is there anything that's on your beautiful little brain right now?
No, I mean, this really resonated with me, and I see a lot of people sort of making jokes and memes about this as well. And I don't think they realize how insidious that is, not just for this time of the year, but for the rest of the year, just how they're approaching things. Yeah. So I'm really pumped to jump in. I think it's going to be really valuable.
Good stuff. So we have 5 kind of like main points that we want to share with you. And I'm just going to start with the first one. And again, like some of these concepts, you've probably heard me refer to some of them before because they're not just, they're timely and they're always true, But the first one is this idea of, I want to invite you ladies to just acknowledge the data of where you are. This is a big piece of what I teach as self-acceptance in the stressless eating program with my clients. But, the concept of self-acceptance, the one that's out there is like, just love yourself no matter what. And the argument that I give for that and that I experienced with that was like, well, how do you just love yourself, and tell yourself all these positive things if you've been dogging yourself and being unaccepting of yourself your entire life? It doesn't work that way, right? But there's a flip side of acceptance that I think isn't very talked about. So, the first side that I believe is the truer version of it is like, yes, accept yourself as you are, where you are, who you are right now, but without all that shame, without all that blame, without all that self-rejection and self-condemnation. Because what's the alternative? You are where you are right now. And that's really the point of what I'm reaching for right now, which we're going to come back to. I'm going to kind of put a plug in that for a second. But the second side of self-acceptance that I don't think is talked about very often is this idea that you're allowed to not like certain ways of being or certain habits or certain parts of the way that you're showing up for yourself. And you're allowed to want to up level. And if being a healthier, fitter, whatever version of yourself does make you happier and more confident and feel more powerful, then I say go get 'em, tiger. But the distinction being not at the expense of your health and not at the expense of your happiness. And I know there's a lot of, body positive stuff out there that's saying no, you shouldn't ever want to change your body. You should just accept it as it is. And that's the distinction. Accepting it and resigning to it are two different things. And I think accepting it, absolutely. But you're allowed to want to shift things about you if it's going to make you happier, healthier, all those things, but also not going down the road of the diet mentality. So there's lots of distinctions within these distinctions. But the first point is this, wherever you are right now, bringing it back to the subject at hand, which we talked about this conversation of should I work on this now or should I work on this after the holidays? The first step is really just accepting the data of where you are, how you look, what you weigh, what size you are, all of those things, and all the things not having anything to do with your body. You don't have to like it, right? But I'm inviting you to accept it without the shame, without the blame, without all the drama, because the reality is it is where you are right now, right? You cannot go back in the past and change it. So the faster you start accepting it and looking at it just as data, the concept being that I've talked about before, the data versus the drama. The data is I ate a cookie. The drama is that was bad. That was wrong. I'm weak-willed. I'm a self-sabotager, right? The data is I weigh X. The drama is I'm fat. There's something wrong with me. I need to I'm a self-sabotager. I have no willpower, all that, right? So accepting the data of where you are right now and acknowledging it, knowing you don't have to like it, but just acknowledge where you are, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it's also a really good tool because while you did say you want to start to acknowledge the things that are not as tangible, it's a great tangible way to start practicing that reverse engineering of the thought process, to have something that you can actually quantify, which is where you are physically, whatever that looks like, and start to see it as a neutral circumstance. I think if you can start that with some of the physical stuff, it's a little bit easier then to take those practices into the mental, which is kind of where it goes from there.
Absolutely. And I love how you just brought that up. First of all, reverse engineering, which we're going to talk about specifically in a minute, but this idea that it's a neutral circumstance. Who said that what you weigh right now is bad? Right? It's our thoughts and our feelings about a circumstance that causes it to feel bad. You know what I mean? What if your weight was just your weight? And again, you don't always have to like it, but this is where it's looking at things they just are what they are and accepting the reality of it. Because I know for me, until I accept the reality of it, I can't go get help. What do they say? The truth will set you free, So it really is a matter of just being truthful with yourself, but in a really loving way.
I think that's so true. And I also just want to note kind of what we were saying about the funny jokes about it.
Yeah.
We think that's acknowledging it, but it's really not. It's actually pushing it off into this sort of it's actually separating yourself from it and turning it into this kind of cultural viewpoint. You just become the butt of your own joke, right. And that's not connecting. That's not being realistic. It's actually making it something. It's separating yourself from it.
Absolutely. And I mean, I used to be the queen of like self-deprecating humor. But there's so many memes going around, and like, it's one thing, like if you post it and you're like, oh, I think it's funny, but it's like, you have no idea who's actually in that prison that you're joking about. Or like, there was one about the election. I remember, like, you know, by the time we get to 270 electoral votes, I'm going to be 270 pounds. And it's like, it's not funny.
Yeah.
Like, 270 pounds is a neutral circumstance, and it is just totally demeaning somebody who lives at that weight. Right. It's just like, yeah, we have to be mindful. Again, we live in this Instagram world, like it's all fun and games until we are kind of like an ignorant asshole. Yeah. Pardon my French.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or other people.
Totally. Yeah. Like, so we have to be also just, because if you are memeing yourself, and I don't even know if that's a thing, but if you're memeing yourself, you like, or if you're memeing other people, I should say, like, you are judging yourself just as harshly, even if it's coming across as humor. So be mindful of like the self-deprecating humor too. Yeah. It's not benign, ladies. No. And that is not a version of telling the truth. No. That is, again, like a dramatization. And even though it makes you smile, like 9 times out of 10, I bet it's making you cry on the inside. You know, so I love that you brought that up. Okay, cool. We are going to go into reverse engineering. I love that it's so funny because, you know, Laura Lee and I have been friends for years now, and we have such different journeys, but we've come to so many of the same conclusions from different places. And this concept of reverse engineering and just like really taking ownership of your life and being responsible for your choices and all that, like we just both, that's who we both are, and we get to just speak in this cool language. So, all right. So the second thing we want to talk about today is really this idea of like deciding who you want to be 60 days from now. You know what I mean? Because really the last, 30 days of the year and the first 30 days of the year, I mean, any 60-day period can be super powerful. Like there's nothing better about the last and the first, but it just tends to be that much more potent because it is the last 30 days and it is the first 30 days of the new year. And so we're going to talk about how to handle the actual holidays in our next point. But before we get into the micro version of like the holiday success mindset, right? We want to just talk about setting intentions right now. And again, like so often we hear people thinking like, oh, I'll just like deal with that in January. So, and it's not always weight. It's not always health. It could be like a relationship. It could be finances, whatever it is. Like I'll just deal with that in January. And a more powerful question is really like, who do you want to be at the end of January? And how can you start reverse engineering that right now? Now, another distinction, like notice I didn't say, what do you want to look like and how much do you want to weigh at the end of January? I said like, who do you want to be and how do you want to feel at the end of January? Like, do you want to be the version of yourself that totally abandons your health and gives up on yourself and numbs out and checks out? And by the way, there is no judgment. There is no right or wrong answer. I just want you to answer this question for yourself, because when it comes to the conversation of like living with intention and living at choice, that's what we're inviting you into, is like really being the creator of your own life. And I don't want you to look back in a couple months and say like, oh crap, I totally let myself go because I acted like I didn't care and I acted like it didn't matter if I waited till January. And I promise you, if you're listening to this podcast, you do care. You care. You're here, you're trying to improve yourself. Like I hear so many women saying like, man, I just act like I don't care, but like you deep down inside do. Yeah. And so really it's like, who do you want to be and how do you want to feel at the end of January? Do you want to feel closer to yourself or do you want to feel more disconnected? Do you want to feel more love for yourself or do you want to feel more self-rejection and self-criticism? Do you want to feel happier and healthier or unhealthier and unhappier? Like the point I'm really trying to drive home is that you have a choice, but we're really talking about the power of intention here.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing to note, because I when people set goals, there's a lot of fear around not achieving them. And I think it's important to know that you don't go into it saying, here's what I'd like, but I know I'm not going to get there. But it is okay to set an intention and to get close and to not be afraid of not reaching that goal, because that's not where the power is. The power is in the intention and in the consistency of it.
1,000%. I love that you brought that up. It's like, we're playing the consistency game, not the intensity game. And this is I wasn't even planning on really bringing this up, but it really is a perfect place to remind you, like, if your goal setting mentality is thinking that like, oh, I have to go in the direction of like restriction and deprivation and punishing myself and persuading myself and missing out on the holidays and all of that stuff that you hate and you really won't stick with, that's where I also invite you, like, ladies, you need a better strategy. Talk about insidious, like the diet mentality and the disordered eating that comes alongside it and the body image and dysmorphic relationship that comes as a result of that. It is an insidious disease. It doesn't go away on its own. It doesn't heal itself. You've got to cut it out. It's like a cancer that manifests. It grows. If you don't, it festers. And so in terms of this whole intention setting thing, like, that's even a great intention, like to heal your relationship with food, heal your relationship with your body, heal your relationship with yourself. And obviously I'm biased, but it's not just because that's what I like, the work is here that I'm here to do. It's because, ladies, I did that for decades. And it just leaves you in this prison of dieting, this prison of shame, this prison of like self-loathing, and it doesn't get you anywhere. So what if your intentions were to, again, heal? Like, imagine, like, throw out the weight loss goals for right now. What if your intention was to heal? Who would you be at the end of January if you set that intention right now? Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that up. It really is, that simple, not easy, because the goal setting mentality can really be deceiving too. But also in terms of like timelines, it can be really powerful, especially, again, if you have the right strategy and the right mindset. But like, think about how well we all do when we do have like a future vision or an intention. Like, think about if you have like a wedding that you're going to or a trip that you're planning for. And even though both of those things aren't happening as much right now, but like, when, it's helpful to be like, oh, you know what? I want to feel really amazing when I step on that beach, next month for my vacation or whatever. And it's really powerful to have an intention. And don't get me wrong. Like, again, this is where the strategy side thing needs to be a part, because like, if you're indoctrinated into thinking like that all or nothing, or like, it's just a separate part of the equation, but setting that intention now, it's so, so powerful. And you have that evidence and that proof in other areas of your life that it's powerful too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So that is the second thing. First thing is accepting where you are, accepting the data, even if you don't like it, right? But just the truth will set you free. The second thing is really setting this powerful intention now. Who do you want to be 60 days from now, ladies? I promise you, you can heal your relationship with food, your body, yourself by then. Like, it is simple, not easy, but like when you're committed and you, again, set your intention on that versus weight loss, or the opposite, set your intention on like carefree abandonment, because that is an intention. That's something I want to point out. Like, just saying like, screw it, I will deal with this in January. That is an intention. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Inaction is a form of action,
right.
So keep that in mind too. So those are our first 2 points. The third thing is, and again, all of these are just like, we're just really trying to simplify this and show you how simple these shifts can be. The third thing we want to talk about is this idea. We went macro, right? Now we want to go micro. You hear people say all the time, like, oh my gosh, I just let myself go over the holidays. But we're here to just remind you, ladies, Thanksgiving is one day. Christmas is one day. New Year's is one day. Hanukkah, 8 days long, but it's not there's only so many latkes you can eat, right? But you get the point. We act like this time from, Halloween to New Year's has to be this downward spiral. But I will tell you this, like, what if it was the time of year where you actually went in an upward spiral, where you invested in your health and yourself? Like, even just looking at it from this micro perspective, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever you celebrate, it doesn't have to be a downward spiral. The only thing causing you to live into that is thinking that it has to be, right? So let's talk about how do we actually deal with the holidays then so that we don't really fall into that trap. So the first thing I want to talk about is like the day of, right? What if you could just be present? Not focusing on your body, not focusing on like, oh my gosh, I hope they don't notice if I gained weight. Like not focusing on the food, like totally being present with your family, with your friends. If you happen to not be able to be with your family, maybe in general, you're not with your family on the holidays or this year, making arrangements with your friends or do a Zoom date with your family. I'm actually not going to be with my family this year on Thanksgiving. A couple of my girlfriends and I are going to do some takeout. We're going to find someplace that's open and we're going to do a Friendsgiving in social distance. But either way, like it's a be present kind of day. It doesn't have to be this stressful holiday where you're thinking about what you're eating, what not to eat. Oh my gosh, are my pants going to fit? And I'm totally generalizing right now, but it doesn't have to be this consumptive thing, right? And then on the flip side, right, the big one when it comes to the feasting that usually happens on these holidays, that's where people think like, oh, that's a trigger. That is where I'm going to go down like the rabbit hole. And so here's my invitation to you. First of all, this is a product or a symptom of the paradigm that you're living in. And let me just clarify what I mean. Most people think like, oh my gosh, I have no control over what I'm eating, whether this is on a holiday or not on a holiday. It's all year round. But generally speaking, overeating, over-consuming, binging, emotional eating, mindless eating, just stuffing your belly, whatever it is for you, that most women think that is the problem, right? That it's a food problem. But I'm telling you, ladies, it is just a symptom. Overeating is a symptom and an effect of restriction, okay? Of course, if you are living with this diet mentality where 6 days a week or 7 days a week, you're counting, measuring, weighing and tracking, looking how many carbs something has, whatever it is for you, of course, when you give yourself permission, you are going to overeat and eat with carefree abandonment, even not on a holiday, right? It's a symptom, right? But so what's the alternative? The alternative is to not live in that world. Oh, the other side of it is like, I have to get as much in as I can today because tomorrow I'm going to go back and get on the wagon and restrict again. So it's this like all or nothing mentality and kind of a scarcity mentality around food. And when I say scarcity, it's like, oh, I can't have that tomorrow. So I have to get it in today. And so again, many like the binging and the overeating, the over consuming and all that, it really is the product of restriction and deprivation. And so again, when I talk to you about like, hey, let's be present. And so what I was going to say originally, kind of bringing it full circle was, what if you could be present on Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, and give yourself permission to eat, but not with the mentality of like, I have to get it in all at once right now because I can't have it tomorrow. With the intentionality of like, wow, I'm going to just give myself permission to indulge and enjoy this. And I'm going to eat until I'm full, but not overstuffed. And I'm going to eat till I'm satisfied, but not gluttonously like wanting to unbuckle my belt or whatever it is for you, And because it's that thought that I can't have it tomorrow or I didn't have it all week that causes us to overindulge. So what if it was like, again, have at it. Give yourself permission because again, binging is not the problem. Overeating is not the problem. It's a symptom of the diet mentality. So what if this Thanksgiving was the first time you gave yourself permission and the next day you didn't go back to that radical, crazy dieting or whatnot, but you actually, again, this was the year that you healed your relationship with food.
And oh my gosh, I love all of that so much. It's so powerful. And one thing I thought of when you were talking is this idea of like saving up, because there's been a time in my life where I've had a disordered relationship with food. And I know there would be a lot of like treats and snacks and things that I really loved that my mom would make, but I would be like, no, I'm just going to save up until the big meal. And at that point, I'm so ready to just indulge that it felt like I couldn't help but overeat because I'd just been building up that, that saving mentality for so long. And so I think really what Leanne's saying, you can apply that. The holidays are only a handful of days, but if there is something that's special to you when you're home. I think switching your mentality to being open to, some other things instead of just, I must just hoard all of these calories and my mental strength for this one meal can be really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is like what came up for me as you were saying that too is like, I mean, a lot of times food has these connotations and connection with our childhood or, and it's like, again, missing, like food is not just for pleasure. It's a connection. Like food is family, food is love. Like, and even I remember I went to this dinner a few months ago and I actually got a recipe from my mom because I was like the token Jew that came to this meal. And I was like, I'm going to show them some, like, it's called kugel. It's a noodle recipe. A noodle casserole, and I made it and I knew it was going to be delicious because I remember it as a child. And I just remember being like, I want to be able to actually eat what I brought and enjoy, because it like connected. I don't live by my family. Like it like literally connected me to my mom. Yeah, Mommy, if you're listening, I love you. But it was like, that's the thing. Like, food is a connection. And so sometimes when we deny ourselves, first of all, it comes back later with a vengeance, but we're not just denying the food, we're denying some sort of connection that really is a powerful experience for us. Absolutely. Actually brings us really nicely, ironically, into our point number 4. So the fourth thing we wanted to talk about today was this idea of, because again, we're talking about like, what if this holiday season was a success for you? And from listening to this podcast, we don't just mean it physically. It's mental, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's social, it's all of that. And so the thing, and I'm using the words pay attention when I say this, but I want you to really just start paying attention to your connection levels. Okay. This is a tricky year. It's a tricky time of year and it's a tricky year, right? You're hearing, we're actually recording this a couple weeks before Thanksgiving. But it's one of those things where like you're hearing the media saying right now that they're like kind of, telling you not to connect with family as much and do Zoom Thanksgivings and all that. We don't know what it's going to look like. And we don't know what the winter is going to look like, but connection is connection, and I've learned, if there's anything I've learned, like, is you can create connection and intimacy through a phone, through a letter, through a text, all that. Like, it doesn't have to be in person, but you've got to monitor it. You know what I mean? Like, instead of monitoring your calorie intake, what if you monitored your actual like social and emotional connection and really pay attention, but without shame, without, condemnation, to things like, the downside of it, I'll call it, things like depression and sadness and loneliness and isolation. And then the kind of like upside, as in like the high heart rate kind of stuff, like anxiety and overwhelm and fear and all of that, right? The worry side of it. It's like, I always describe to my clients, like anxiety and depression are kind of like two sides of the same spectrum. Exactly. Yeah. Like, depression is very past-based experiences and anxiety is very future-based experiences. And neither one is, predictable. Like they're both just like their own animal. But I really want you to start paying attention, because this is a connection thing. Like, we've talked about this on so many episodes and we talk about it in the webinar, and we're going to talk about our webinar as well. But like, when you're overindulging in food, and it's not just food, it's Netflix, it's mindlessly, scrolling on Instagram and Facebook, it is mindless shopping online, it's alcohol consumption, whatever it is, any type of like overindulgence where you are numbing, distracting, comforting, procrastinating, that is not you being weak-willed or self-sabotage problem. I'll even go as far as say that is not you being addicted to your cell phone or addicted to food. And yes, I know that's a very controversial statement, but I'm making it. This is a brain wiring thing, ladies, especially the female brain, this social part of our brain. It is bigger in the female brain than it is in the male brain. We are wired to look for and need social connection and acceptance and inclusion from others. we're wired to need it more than men need it. Not that men don't need it, but we need it more. That's why 80% of disordered eating and eating disorders occurs in females. That's why upwards of, I think 60% of depression and anxiety is in females. We are more skewed towards the emotional distress side of things because we are living in a world now where we need connection more than ever, and our brain needs it more than ever. This is an oxytocin thing, not a dopamine thing, and we need it. And when we don't, we will get it. And by the means of whatever we've fired and wired into our nervous system. So for me, it was always sugar. Now my go-tos have become things like Netflix, but I'm very mindful of it now, of knowing what it is and knowing what it isn't. Anything can be a tool or a weapon, depending on who we are being when we're using it. So this is a connection thing. And again, we think that we are just powerless or that we're self-sabotaging, but this is a brain thing. It's a wiring in your brain thing. So really pay attention to your emotions, and please, for whatever reason you wouldn't, get connected. Make sure that you are staying in touch with people. This is not the time to suffer in silence, especially now, right? And so I just wanted to really point out the connection, no pun intended, between connection and consumption and weight and health and all of that.
Mm-hmm. And the only thing I'll say to that, because I think it was really well said, is that this is a really good time of the year to volunteer in some capacity. And I know we can't do a lot of that in person, but it's almost like a treat to yourself, like a selfish thing. This is an awesome, awesome time of the year to help somebody in need. And you will get so much out of that. What that will do for your mental health, and you're also improving someone else's life. It's just a great tool.
Absolutely. And contribution can come in so many different forms. I know for me, I've shared this on the podcast too. Like for me, when I used to experience my version of depression, I was very selfish. It was like a very selfish place for me. Like I had this awareness, a heightened awareness of when I get depressed, I totally disregard people in my life. I ignore them. When I isolate, I think I'm the one isolating myself, and I'm actually isolating other people from me, mm-hmm. And people would get mad. They'd be like, Leanne, at one point in time, my family would be like, don't do that. Mm-hmm. Don't disappear for weeks at a time. Cause I still lived in Orlando. This is when I lived in Orlando, but I lived near them, but they, don't disappear on us, you know? And so, one of the things I want to also invite you into is what if when you're feeling down, reaching out to check in on somebody else, what if that was an antidote? Sometimes I'll just when I'm feeling down, I'll just send love to somebody that I think might be also going through a hard time, so contribution. I love that you brought that into this conversation. So next time you get a text from me.
Extra excuse for us to talk.
We thought we knew each other well before, and then we just do a podcast episode, and then all of our deep dark stuff comes out. So this next one is another one that comes up, and I'm going to turn this one over to Laura Lee, but a lot of you are cooking this a lot more over the holidays. A lot of you are hosting. And again, the hosting might look different. Anything's possible. I just attended a Zoom bar mitzvah, anything's possible, right? I mean, we're going to church on Zoom. We're doing we're going to school on Zoom, therapies on Zoom. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more Zooming this holiday season, but cooking, we've talked about this before, is a lot of people have a very stressful relationship with their kitchen. A lot of people have a really stressful relationship with hosting, especially if that's your thing. You put a lot of pressure on yourself. And if you're a recovering perfectionist, which a lot of people listening are, it's was it good enough? Was it pretty enough? Was the food good enough? All of this, right? So this, cooking and hosting, that could be stress and anxiety. We want to invite you. What if it was, what's the successful mindset around that? So I'm going to turn it over to you on that one.
Okay. So gosh, a couple things. So first, on the practical side, I do think preparedness is important as we go into the holiday season. So one, making sure that you do have things in your fridge, freezer, and pantry, for healthy-ish, whatever that looks like for you, for eating, and then for whatever meals you are going to be serving. I think having some basics in terms of your equipment and your staples and in your freezer is super, super helpful. And I do have a meal plan system. They're called the Simply Balanced Meal Plans. And I have taken a lot of the stress out of holiday cooking by creating a holiday meal plan. And I have a bunch of different meal plans that you could make for even when you just have people around for the week. And those are incredibly helpful because they are a unique batch cooking approach, which has the mindset behind it of actually creating more time and energy. And it's a system. Yeah. So I can definitely let anyone know if they have any questions about that.
Yeah.
But on the
we can link
side,
that in the show notes. And I just have to shamelessly plug you for a second because a lot of my clients have signed up for your meal plans. And one of the things that really precipitated this was this idea of becoming a stressless cook. And that's the thing, ladies, people think it's about the meal plans. It's not. It's about who you're being in your kitchen and feeling like you're taking control and influence of your life, of your food, of what you're cooking for yourself. So, and I get to just brag on you because I love to, but I really believe in it. It's one of those things where like your system that you teach, it really is a system of thinking. Like you are helping people transform their minds around who they are in the kitchen. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Thank you. And I actually had someone message me the other day and she said, it's just what did she say? It's just common sense cooking is what she called it. And I love that. And it was such a good way to put it because it's not about the content. It really is it's about the format. It's about the mindset. It's about becoming a proficient and stressless cook. So we can definitely give you guys information about my meal plans and how they're a little bit different and how they could make your holiday season even better. But the other thing is ultimately at the end of the day, guys, it's just shifting your mindset to remember that nobody is going to remember if you had the fancy napkins and if you didn't burn something and whatever it is. And if you did, that's a great story, but that's not, especially in this year, all people want is warmth, safety, connection, family, comfort. I mean, this is the year. If there is, who cares if it is takeout? This is the year to do that. This is the year to take that off of your shoulders and to put yourself in the position of being the guest. Is that what you would care about? Even if you are somebody who loves to be a perfect hostess, I guarantee you that's not what you would be worried about. You would just be so grateful to have someone who is, taking care of things and who's hosting for you. So I really, really think that can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I mean, what she's not saying is it's kind of like take a chill pill and be present with the people that are there. I promise you.
And if you need to order pizza one night, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm like, hey, tell me where to go to have pizza on Thanksgiving, exactly. But like, it's one of those things where if you're having people over at your house, they are so grateful to just be a part of something, and just be provided for and cooked for and loved on. And it really isn't about that. So, taking the stress out of the cooking and being present with it and just having fun with it and taking the stress out of hosting.
Yeah. And think about if you were thinking back on sort of your best experiences visiting somewhere, staying, whatever it is, it's not going to be those details, but you will remember, oh my gosh, every time I walk into Leanne's presence, she's relaxed. She relaxes me. We sit down. We have an amazing conversation. It's a cozy room. The fire is lit, maybe a glass of wine. Those are the things you're going to remember that are going to make you want to have that experience again. It's not going to be that she had like a 10-course dinner.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those things where if I walked into your house and you had this amazing spread on the dining room table, but you were harried and frazzled and frustrated, I would rather have pizza with you in bliss.
Right,
yeah, exactly. So it really is, again, who you're being and how you're feeling, and just show up and do you and be you. I love it. Awesome. Good stuff. Well, just to kind of bring it all together, ladies, really the big picture that we want to just kind of impress upon you is like, what if this was not this, what if the holiday season wasn't some sort of like downward spiral for you to move away from your health goals, for you to move away from yourself, for you to end up in a place that's further away from a connected, confident, proud, loving version of yourself in January, right? Who do you want to be at the end of the holiday season? And how can you start on that now? Really, it's about taking radical ownership of your life and your choices and living at choice, because, in everything I'm sharing, I'm just speaking from a place of this is where I was. Like, I wish somebody had told me these kinds of things, but I used to live as such a victim to my circumstances. Like, this is just who it is. This is just what happens. This is what happens. The holidays, I gain like 10 pounds and I feel like crap in the new year and I do something about it. And former versions of myself, it would have been this diet mentality. And for so many reasons that we've mentioned on this podcast episode today, that is, I don't want to say it's the wrong conversation because that would be a judgment. It's just not a conversation that serves you, ladies. What if you could enter into a new conversation where this is the perfect time to just get right with yourself? Like, it's interesting because this is the year of the pandemic. Who knows what we'll refer to it as, next year. But right now, this is the year. 2020 will, live in infamy as that. But I talk to so many women, and the silver lining of these times that we're living in, and please don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying the pandemic is good, but there is some really beautiful silver lining that's coming off the back of it, including just more time with ourselves and more time with our families and all that. But one of the things I'm hearing from clients now is, especially ones that have, enrolled recently, is like, I wouldn't have been able to do this before. I was going to work. I was so frazzled and harried. Like, this is the time for me. Like, that's one of the upsides of this pandemic is I have the ability to actually spend this time investing in myself and healing. And so what if this was the season that you healed? Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, ladies, it can happen so much faster than you think, right? When you are committed and when you just unbrainwash yourself of the diet mentality or unbrainwash yourself of the lie that you have to go down a rabbit hole of gaining weight and feeling like crap in January, So, and then, the last thing I just want to mention is, Laura Lee and I, we're just super purposeful and passionate about all of this stuff. And we're going to be hosting a special live webinar for all you guys, for her audience, for my audience. And we are going to share the 5-step game plan that I teach my female clients to use to overcome this, what we're talking about, this all or nothing diet mentality, the self-sabotage, the overeating, the overindulging, literally the 5-step game plan I teach my female clients. And so if you want to join us live for that, it is going to be taking place December 3rd. And we'll just give you a link to that. You can go to stresslesseating.com/holiday and just listen to the end of this episode, and we'll send you there as well. But in the meantime, just again, reiterating, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you, and you get to choose what you make of it. And what if you could just enter into this new year feeling like a whole new version of yourself? What would be possible for you then? So awesome. Any last words you want to impart before we sign off?
No, I would love for you all to join us in the webinar. I think we're going to really get to expand on some of this, and we'll be closer to some, to the biggest holidays, which I think will be really helpful.
Absolutely.
So I love you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Thanks for being here, and thanks for tuning in, ladies. And we will catch you on the next episode. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard and you're interested in breaking out of your own food, body, and diet prison, here's what I want you to do next. Head on over to stresslesseating.com/holiday. That's stresslesseating.com/holiday and sign up for the live Stressless Eating webinar on December 3rd, where Laura Lee and I will walk you through the exact 5-step game plan my female clients use to conquer emotional eating, self-sabotage, and finally heal themselves from the restrictive all-or-nothing diet mentality for good, but without obsessing or spending years in therapy to address it. We're going to lay it all out for you there in 5 easy steps. Remember, healing your relationship with food and your body does not happen by itself, especially during the holiday season. You need expert guidance to make it happen, and we've helped clients all over the world take back their power from the food and find true and lasting freedom while enjoying life and warm chocolate chip cookies along the way. To see if we can help you do the same, head on over to stresslesseating.com/holiday. I'm Leanne Ellington, and I'll see you next time.